How do you build a convincing 1860s frontier ghost town in the 1940s? He had no blueprint. So instead of faking it, he bought real buildings from actual dying ghost towns, trucked them in piece by piece, and rebuilt them like nothing had ever happened. That's the puzzle Walter Knott ended up solving, right next to a fake volcano and a berry stand in Buena Park, California, decades before Disneyland ever existed. Along the way, a man will sell his own house and car to build a ride, hide inside it in a gorilla suit to scare his own guests, and a mountain that looks like solid rock will turn out to be completely hollow. I dug through old photographs, the park's own newspapers, and years of construction records and used advanced AI to piece together exactly how they pulled it off. This is how they built it. The story starts with dirt and fruit. In 1920, Walter Knott and his wife Cordelia moved to Buena Park and began farming a leased patch of land, selling berries and pies from a roadside stand. In 1932, a neighbor named Rudolph Boyson handed Walter the last 6 struggling plants of an experimental berry vine he'd given up on. Walter nursed them back to life, and customers started asking what the huge dark berries were, so he named them boysenberries. The real turning point came in 1934. To survive the Depression, Cordelia began serving fried chicken dinners on the family's own wedding china. Word spread fast, and the tea room could not keep up. Lines outside the restaurant stretched up to 3 hours long. What I find almost funny is that America's first theme park began as a crowd control problem. Walter Knott was just trying to keep a hungry, restless line from giving up and driving home. Even the stand itself kept evolving during these years. Walter kept adding to it, bit by bit. A bigger fruit stand, a small nursery selling berry plants to home gardeners, and eventually a modest tea room where Cordelia could serve visitors something more than jam samples. None of it looked like a business plan. Just a farmer solving one problem at a time. Too much fruit, then too many customers, then nowhere to seat them. By the time Cordelia started cooking chicken dinners, the property had already quietly outgrown its roadside stand roots. Soon a 3-hour line would need something to look at. And that's when things got strange. With crowds trapped in line for hours, Walter started giving them something to look at, and it began almost like landscaping. He dug an ornamental lake, laid out a rock garden, and parked a weathered old stagecoach on the property for people to admire. He dressed up the grounds and tucked little displays out back for people to stumble on. He even built a replica of the fireplace from George Washington's Mount Vernon. Then came the showpiece, a 20-foot artificial volcano that rumbled and belched real steam from its summit. A piece of pure roadside spectacle built for no reason other than to make the wait feel shorter. By the end of the decade, the crowds were enormous, and the diversions had to grow with them. None of it was a ride. There was no admission, no gate, no plan for a park at all. Each new attraction was simply another way to hold the crowd's attention for a few more minutes and send them home happy enough to come back. But a deeper idea was taking shape in Walter's head. He had grown up on his mother's stories of crossing the Mojave Desert by covered wagon in 1868, and he wanted to build something that honored those pioneers, a place that would teach visitors about the Old West as much as amuse them. So instead of building a fake town, he decided to go buy a real one. In 1940, Walter Knott broke ground on the project that would define everything, a full ghost town built as a tribute to the pioneers. A year earlier, he'd hired an artist to paint a giant curved mural, or cyclorama, for the centerpiece show he had planned. But the work stalled, and the artist quit. Knott brought in a portrait painter named Paul von Kleben, who finished the mural in weeks and became the creative force behind the rest of Ghost Town, serving as art director from 1943 to 1953. He drew the concept art and floor plans, oversaw construction, and invented a process to age fresh lumber so new boards looked 100 years old. The crew chemically treated the wood, scorched and distressed it, then left it to bleach in the sun until brand new timber looked like it had weathered 50 hard winters. Von Kleben would pick up a spray gun and paint plain concrete until it passed for natural rock. What strikes me is that almost none of it was fake in the usual sense. Rather than throw up hollow movie set facades, Knott bought abandoned buildings from dying towns across Arizona, Nevada, and California. Some from as far as Prescott, Arizona, had them taken apart board by board, hauled hundreds of miles to Buena Park, and reassembled on the farm. As he put it in 1942, he wasn't collecting museum pieces, he was trying to collect a whole town, a composite of the Old West as it looked in 1849. The first structure was the Gold Trails Hotel, and around it rose a main street of leaning storefronts, a saloon, a blacksmith shop, a jail, a post office, and a cemetery called Boot Hill. The jail came with a wisecracking prisoner named Sad Eye Joe, and Boot Hill was scattered with mock graves. One rigged so visitors standing over it could feel a faint heartbeat pulsing up through the ground. Most of Main Street was standing by early 1941. Inside the Gold Trails Hotel sat Knott's most personal creation, the Covered Wagon Show, von Kleben's cyclorama showing a wagon train crossing the desert, staged with three-dimensional set pieces, lighting that shifted from day to night, and recorded narration. For the parking lot of a farm restaurant, it was an astonishing thing to have built. Ghost Town kept spreading, and Walter Knott chased authenticity to almost fanatical lengths. In 1951, he bought Calico, California, an old silver mining settlement on its last legs, out in the Mojave Desert, and put von Kleben in charge of restoring it. Back in Buena Park, the additions grew bolder. In 1952, Knott opened the Ghost Town and Calico Railroad, a narrow-gauge steam railway running vintage locomotives rescued from defunct Western lines in a full loop around the property, which meant laying true railroad track and building a depot and a roundhouse to service the engines. The little steam trains still puff around that loop today, and to this day the ride is sometimes interrupted by costumed bandits who gallop up on horseback and stage a holdup. That same year, he shipped in a one-room schoolhouse he had bought at auction in Kansas. A new art director, Otheto Weston, took over the theming after von Kleben and designed the Adobe Butterfield stage station in 1953. In 1954, the Birdcage Theater opened for live melodramas, where audiences were encouraged to boo the villain. The next few years filled in the rest of the frontier. Around 1953, crews expanded Boot Hill and added a grist mill and a barrel house along School Road. Knott had already raised a strange bottle house made from more than 3,000 liquor bottles, echoing similar bottle houses that once stood in the Death Valley ghost town of Rhyolite. And in 1956, after a collector named Marion Spear donated 30,000 Old West artifacts, Knott raised the Western Trails Museum to hold them, its walls formed from rammed earth construction in the same fireproof style used in the real Calico. It was a slowly expanding, walk-through frontier town, still free to enter, still just an elaborate way to make the chicken dinner wait worth remembering. While Walter Knott was busy building history museums and brick walls, the rides that would actually define Knott's as a theme park were coming from someone else entirely. The partnership between Knott and Bud Hurlbut was never put on paper. In 1955, Hurlbut brought an 1896 Denzel carousel onto the property, one that had already lived two lives, first at Hershey Park in Pennsylvania, then at a park in Canton, Ohio, before Hurlbut acquired it and installed it at Knott's. From that point on, the two men ran everything on a handshake. No contracts, just trust. That trust got tested fast. When Hurlbut pitched the Calico Mine Ride a few years later, he needed serious money he didn't have, so he sold his ranch, his house, and his own Cadillac to fund it. Walter Knott took a risk in return. He let Hurlbut skip rent payments during construction and personally paid for a promotional film to help the ride succeed. Walt Disney himself reportedly stopped by more than once just to watch it come together. The partnership outlasted the rides themselves. Years later, when Knott's launched its Halloween Haunt event, Hurlbut wasn't content to just rent fake corpses from a Hollywood prop house. He put on a gorilla suit himself and hid inside his own mine ride to scare guests in person. He'd go on to build his own park, Castle Park in Riverside, in 1976, using leftover train cars from his Knott's days to do it. By 1958, Hurlbut had earned enough of Walter Knott's confidence to go bigger. He added an antique auto ride that year, working with the ride firm Aero Development, and then talked Knott into letting him take on something far more ambitious. On November 22, 1960, Hurlbut opened the Calico Mine Ride, a dark ride that carried guests on a mine train deep into a fake mountain, past glowing caverns and dripping pools, and into a vast underground cathedral chamber called the Glory Hole. Rising on the former site of an old horse show arena, the mountain swallowed a small fortune, around $1.5 million, and took more than a year to assemble, filled with animated scenes of miners at work deep in the rock. Hurlbut designed, engineered, and ran his rides himself under a lease, taking a share of every ticket, which made him Walter Knott's single most important partner in turning the farm into a park. What gets me is that the mountains looming over Ghost Town are completely hollow, steel frameworks sprayed with concrete, then hand-carved and painted to pass for ancient stone. From a few feet away, they're utterly convincing. The Calico Mine Ride's mine train ran on electric motors built into the locomotives themselves, an innovation for the time, and to manage the crowds waiting to board, Hurlbut designed what's believed to be the first hidden switchback queue in any amusement park, a winding line tucked out of sight so guests never saw how long it actually was. That single idea became standard practice at theme parks everywhere. A decade later came Hurlbut's masterpiece. In 1968, he broke ground on the Timber Mountain Log Ride, a log flume dressed as a working lumber camp, its mountain built the same hollow way, but wired for water instead of ore carts. Working again with Aero Development, which had pioneered the log flume, he cut water troughs through the structure that carried hollow log-shaped boats up a lift and down through carved-out scenes before a final splashing drop. He packed the interior with genuine antique sawmill gears, cast-iron machinery, and steam engines so the scenes would feel real, rather than staged. It opened on July 11, 1969, and Walter Knott himself climbed aboard and rode it alongside Hurlbut. The two rides are still the beating heart of the park, and even today the log ride sometimes draws more riders in a day than pass through the front gate. By the mid-1960s, Walter Knott's other great passion, American history, produced the most surprising project of all. Across Beach Boulevard from Ghost Town, he raised a full-scale replica of Philadelphia's Independence Hall, right down to a cracked Liberty Bell. Knott dedicated it himself on July 4, 1966. I think that's the detail people miss about Knott's. A berry farmer put up a full-scale civic monument just because he believed in it. For all its growth, the farm still had no gate. Anyone could wander into Ghost Town for free. That changed in 1968, when the Knott family enclosed Ghost Town behind a brick wall and charged admission for the first time. With that single fence, the accidental attraction officially became an amusement park. Building an exact replica meant nothing could be approximated. The hall was raised from specially prepared brick, aged and textured to match the colonial look of the 1776 original, and the finished structure packed 10 rooms and 2 stores into 2 floors, one of which held a 300-seat theater. Getting it right took 2 years of research and repeated trips to Philadelphia. Since Knott wasn't after a facade, he wanted the actual room layout matched. The 1968 wall took even more engineering than it looked like from the outside. 10 feet high and topped with barbed wire, it didn't just fence off Ghost Town, it looped around 3 separate sections of the park at once. Putting it up forced Knott to reroute the park's own cable car line, which had run freely around the grounds for years, and build new infrastructure just to manage paying crowds. A hand-stamped gate near the volcano for entry, and separate exit turnstiles and re-entry gates across Gold Mine Road so guests could still reach the steakhouse and shops without buying a second ticket. It took nearly half a century for a leased berry patch in Buena Park to grow into what the park still bills as America's first theme park, built out of improvisation, salvaged buildings, and a stubborn refusal to let a restaurant line get bored. When Disneyland opened 8 miles away in 1955, many expected it to swallow the farm whole. Instead, Knott's kept thriving. Walter Knott never drew up a master plan. He simply kept building, 1 relocated hotel, 1 hollow mountain, 1 hand-aged plank, and 1 borrowed gorilla suit at a time. He ran it until his death in 1981, and the family sold to a larger company in 1997. That sale brought Cedar Fair in for $300 million, and the corporation expanded the park in directions Walter never touched, adding coasters, drop towers, and a Peanuts-themed kids area. In 2024, Cedar Fair merged with Six Flags, folding Knott's into an even larger portfolio. Yet the bones Walter laid down are still there. Ghost Town's buildings are largely the same structures he trucked in decades ago. Independence Hall still opens its doors for free, exactly as he intended. And Cordelia's chicken dinners are still served on the same spot today, more than 90 years after that first plate went out on the family's wedding china. Hit subscribe for more stories of how the places we recognize today were actually built, and tell me in the comments what I should cover next.